You're very good.
Everybody? And I'd like to thank Rachel first for being able to film this for us. We haven't been able to film anything. So if anybody wants to see it after, Rachel will have it. So we're going to start with our Pledge of Allegiance. And I believe Sue here volunteered to lead us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now our president is out west with wild horses. Our vice president is not making it, so I guess ex officio president, I'm it, guys. So let me introduce people that you might know. On our committee, we do have Marge Green, well known in Eaton Center, and she is our secretary. We have Tim Erin, who has a lot of titles. He is a member of the committee. He's in Rotary. Do you have a position there?
No.
All right. He's our school board president here. He's on the TIFA board and your chairman there. What am I missing? Is that it? Oh, E4 Street Commission.
Father 3, grandfather 6.
Father is 3, yeah. Grandfather 6. You're way ahead of me. Okay. And I'm Nancy Breyer, for anybody who might not know. Donavan doesn't know me yet. And I'd like to introduce the people in the audience. We have our one speaker who is here on time, and going to go first is Erin Byrnes. Wherever you'd like to speak, you're ready. And we have two council people, if they both stated. Tom's in the corner, Tom Winslow. Yeah. Denise Malinowski Maxwell, and I'm also on council.
So we don't have no quorum tonight.
No quorum. And let's see, Donavan, I don't know your last name. McKinney. Oh,
Yes.
we had a lot of McKinneys go to school here.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Silas McKinney, are you related?
More than likely. Like,
Genealogy
I
project.
could ask my grandmother. I'm like, probably.
He was a star.
Yeah.
Star athlete.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then let's see, who else? We have Lena. Would you like to pronounce your last name for them?
Yes, sure. Lena Arzuni,
Arzuni.
mayor candidate for Dearborn.
She's a mayoral candidate. We have another mayoral candidate, but we're not going to talk that part.
That's next month.
Actually, I think we got both of them.
That's the preview for next month,
That's
right?
next month's meeting.
Yeah.
And then we have, I know his
And third out of
nickname.
the 4, but Hussein and I.
This is Hussein.
Yep.
Yeah, all right. So anyhow, now you know who all the people are, and we'll go from there. And would you like to take, oh, Cheryl. She is representing Rashida Tlaib's office. So we'll go forward with all of that. Oh, and Donavan, did I tell him what you're doing or what you're doing? He's running against the gentleman who didn't show tonight, or anyone from his office, 310 of our.
Yeah.
So,
Which is
Sharif.
13th
13th congressional.
district, right?
13th. So if you live on Annapolis on the south side of the street or downriver, that is the gentleman who's running for office. Okay, and Rachel, you're gonna be ready to take it away?
Oh, yeah, I'm good. You're
We're
good
going?
to go.
All
Yeah.
right, Erin, wherever you want to speak from,
Okay, sure.
update us on what's happening in Lansing.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Breyer.
All
I'll stand
right.
back here so I don't have my back to anyone. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So thank you all first and foremost for coming out tonight. Thank you, Councilwoman, for the kind introduction. I also want to just give a shout out to my colleague in the House, Donavan McKinney. As Councilwoman Breyer mentioned, he is running for Congress in the 13th Congressional District, which is a district that spans, Detroit and the metro area. And he, when he is elected, will have several precincts in Dearborn Heights. So very excited to have him here. He's been a wonderful colleague and a true friend in the House. So I look forward to everybody getting a chance to get to know Donavan. So again, my name is Erin Byrnes. I am the state rep for House District 15, which encompasses the west end of Dearborn and all of Dearborn Heights, except for a portion of Precinct 8, which is further north. So I'm happy to be here with all of you. As folks may know, I'm in my second term currently, and just really wanted to come in and provide a fairly quick update on what's going on in Lansing, and there's a lot to talk about. But I'll try to be as succinct as possible and then open it up for questions if that makes sense and we have time. All right, awesome. So I will start by sharing just a quick update kind of on where I'm situated and what I'm doing in the Capitol. So I currently serve on two committees, our Education and Workforce Committee, as well as our Families and Veterans Committee. So I'm very excited and just honored to be part of those committees, and really looking to bring forward some good legislation to help support our educators, our students and our families, of course, and our veteran community as well. So I've been learning a lot so far this year on both of those committees, and again, I'm really just excited and happy to be on those committees. So I'll start from there with a quick legislative update, and then I'll broaden the scope a little bit to give you just a broader sense of what's going on in the Capitol. So in terms of legislation that I've been working on so far, we've been really focused on transparency. And folks who know me know that I'm extremely passionate about that. I know Donavan is as well. So I'll talk a little bit about transparency and utility accountability under that umbrella. So far this year I've introduced several pieces of legislation focused on transparency. So one has to do with pay transparency. So we believe that if you are posting a job, that you should have to post a job description and an accurate salary range to go with it. This seems like common sense, but a lot of employers don't do that. Our legislation would change that. So there are, I think, 11 states so far that have enacted pay transparency legislation, and we want to make sure that Michigan gets added to that list. We think that's really important. Pay transparency impacts everyone. If you are posting a job, you should have to post a salary. It's not a volunteer opportunity. If it's something that's paid, people have a right to know what they're going to be making, and if they can afford to live based on whatever the hourly or salary wages that you're offering. So again, it seems like common sense, but it's something that we've been working on really over the past 2 years. So we reintroduced that and are just continuing to kind of pound the pavement on that and really drive home the need for pay transparency. Another transparency measure that we're working on falls under the BRIGHT Act, which stands for Bringing Reforms for Integrity, Transparency, and Ethics. So my bill in that package would essentially empower our Secretary of State to address any campaign finance issues in the moment. So sometimes, if you're following the news, you might catch a headline either on TV or in the newspaper, something out of Lansing that says something along the lines of, a former House Speaker, caught in this scandal. And, it has something to do with campaign finance, and it was going on for 5 years, 10 years, and now we're just addressing it. And you think, why the heck has this been going on for so long? If it's been 5 or 10 years, why didn't they act sooner? The reason is that the current law doesn't really have the teeth that are needed to enforce our current laws that are on the books. So my bill in the BRIGHT Act would change that. And again, it would empower our Secretary of State to act through the courts if and when she or he knows that a campaign finance violation that is serious and that has been proven is occurring. So we want them to be able to address that in the moment, because sometimes what happens is, if someone's running for office or they're already in office, you have to file kind of regular campaign finance reports that let people know the money that you've taken in and the money that you've spent. And that's fair, right? Kind of a basic transparency measure. But those reports are not required to be filed every day or every week, right? It's more like several times a year. So if I file a report in, say, January, and then an issue occurs that needs to be addressed, but I'm not filing another report until maybe April, maybe July, time can pass, right? And issues can pile up, and sometimes folks can inadvertently wind up getting away with shady behavior that is against our campaign finance rules, but people just don't know it yet, right? And so over time, those issues pile up. Again, we want to make sure that that's not the case. We want to hold candidates and elected officials accountable in a way that makes sense, and it helps build just greater trust and transparency for all of our residents. So that's something that's really important for us. So those are some of the transparency measures that we've been working on. And I also want to share, I had a meeting today with the Michigan Hospital Association, and they are working on some bills with our friends in the state Senate, so our other chamber in Lansing. And those bills have to do with transparency as well. So there are a couple of bills in the Senate that would help really, I think, reveal some of the costs that are involved with healthcare. One would require drug manufacturers to be very clear about the prices for any prescription drugs that they're putting out there. We know that prescription drugs can be insanely expensive. It's unbelievable. So that legislation that is currently in the Senate would help address that and make things more transparent in terms of cost for prescription drugs. The other bill that's in the Senate that I hope will come over to us in the House soon would require hospitals to list on their website just the charges, the fees for any standard practices. Anything that they do just on a regular basis, they would be required to list the fees for that. I mean, how many people in this room have gotten maybe a procedure done, you've had an appointment, something in the medical space, you think it's covered or you think maybe it's a low cost, and then a month or two later, you get something in the mail. That dreaded explanation of benefits, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought I knew what my benefits were. I thought they were covered. And then you get hit with a bill. That happened to me a couple years ago. I got an iron infusion because I had low iron, and I was told it was covered, no problem. I think it was maybe 2 months later, I got a bill for almost $1,100. It's a lot of money, and Donovan can tell you legislators, we're not millionaires, right? We're not rolling in dough.
Well,
We
the
don't-
ones who are acting correctly,
Correct.
a lot of people under the table.
Yes, you can talk about another person who
Yeah,
might fit the
yeah.
other side of that spectrum. So, right, and so that's $1,100 is a lot of money. And so I was kind of in a panic seeing this bill, and it took me months to figure it out, lots of phone calls, working through all the medical jargon. So again, I think these bills that are currently in the Senate chamber really help with transparency on that front. So, like I said, for me, I'm super passionate about that. You would think that just being upfront and being honest, whether you're in government, healthcare, any field, right, that impacts people's lives, you would think that that would be common sense, but it isn't always. So we find ourselves needing to create legislation to make sure that folks are just doing the right thing and doing what's straightforward and what should be done. So those are some transparency measures. So I could go on about some of the legislation that we're working on, but I want to broaden the scope now a little bit, because I don't want to talk at you forever. And I do want to share a little bit of what's going on in Lansing more broadly. So as folks may or may not know, we currently, Democrats, are in the minority in the House. So we've got, let me see, I think technically 52 seats, and our Republican counterparts have 58 seats in the House. So they have a majority by 6 seats. The state Senate is still controlled by a Democratic majority. Of course, our governor is still a Democrat. So those are kind of the 3 legs of the stool, the governor, the Senate, and the House. So 2 legs of the stool are run by Democrats, and our leg in the House is currently led by or controlled by Republicans. So our Republican speaker is a representative named Matt Hall from the west side of the state. And I will be honest and tell you, Speaker Hall has fashioned himself to be kind of a state level Donald Trump. So a lot of what we see, a lot of what we see at the federal level, we are seeing copycat legislation introduced by Republicans in the state House. So I'll give an example of what that looks like. Folks may be familiar with something at the federal level called the SAVE Act. This is something that would, on a federal level, disenfranchise millions of voters, same thing at the state level in Michigan. It would essentially require people, you know, if you're registering or getting out to vote, that your name on your voter ID or your voter registration would have to match the name on your birth certificate, among other things, right? And many people, millions of people,
I'm married, so
Right.
mine's different.
you've changed your name,
Yeah.
right? Marriage is a common reason for changing your name. There are other reasons, right? So this impacts millions of people in our state and many more across the country, and it disproportionately and adversely impacts women who are more likely to have changed their name over time. So we saw that at the federal level. We saw that get introduced. We had a copycat resolution at the state level that Republicans were pushing. And I'm very proud to say Democrats banded together and we were able to make sure that that resolution will not go into effect. So that's really good news. I think when we stick together, we can see the difference that we make. And we want to also talk to our Republican colleagues and let them know that even if they have good intentions with something, the impact oftentimes is negative. So we need to make sure that we're driving that point home. So I wanted to share that update, and then I'll just share a budget update, and then I'll stop and open it up for questions. So we are in budget season. I'm sure our friends on city council who are here, school board, everybody knows, right? It's that fun, exciting time of year for us where we get no sleep. And so typically in Lansing, you know, the budget would be, budget bills, legislation, related to the state budget, which is billions and billions of dollars. That would be in process or would have been passed by now, by both chambers, the House and the Senate, right? So you would be having conversation, you would be having negotiations. Unfortunately, this year, what has happened is that our friends in the state Senate have passed their budget bill. So that's kind of their proposal for how we want to fund public education, all of our different departments in the state, including Treasury, Health and Human Services, all of these things that we rely on a daily basis, whether we realize it or not. All the gears are always turning. So our friends in the Senate have done their part and come to the table with what they propose, as has the governor. In the House, our friends on the Republican side of the aisle introduced a couple of months ago 2 budget bills. One that would cut our entire state budget by roughly 90%. And specifically, it would cut, I think it's about 25% or $5 billion, that's B as in boy, $5 billion from school funding alone. So, and I will be transparent, as I always am, my belief is that this is a strong arm tactic to essentially kind of zero out the budget and start negotiations, if you will, at zero. So it's let's gut everything and then let's try to rebuild and cobble something together from there. That's not typically how negotiations work. Usually if you're negotiating and you're working on a budget in good faith, everyone presents what they think is, I would say, somewhat realistic or maybe optimistic, and then you go from there, right? So I think what our friends on the Republican side of the aisle have done in the House is really unprecedented to the best of my knowledge, and it's incredibly unfortunate, and it's heartbreaking to see. So that's where we are right now. House Republicans are telling us that we may not have a budget until the fall. Typically, it would be signed into law by the governor by early July. So if we don't have a budget by the fall, our schools won't know what money they have, they won't know how they're gonna operate. And as we know, our kids go back to school usually late August, right? And so they're trying to push that back. There's talk of a possible government shutdown. And I wanna I wanna be transparent and let you know, you're hearing this from me as time goes on. If folks don't get their act together, you may start to see it more on the news, read about it in the paper. All of this is manufactured. None of this is necessary, none of this has to happen, right? This is all manufactured. And it's just kind of chaos that's being created for really no good reason. So I wanna be clear on that and just let you know, House Democrats, folks in the Senate are showing up, we're ready to work. We wanna negotiate in good faith, and we wanna make sure we have a budget that is balanced, first and foremost, and that really funds our most essential services. And so that's what we're looking to do, but the games are afoot in Lansing, as they always are to some extent, but this year, I'm sure as Donavan can attest as well, it's just on another level. And again, some of that is this created chaos, and it's a model that has started at the federal level, and now it's kind of trickling down in the worst possible way to the state level. So we're doing everything we can to hold the line. We're working for you literally every day. I know we were in Lansing earlier, so we're just running all over the place, doing everything that we can. But I want to make folks aware of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And as Cheryl and I were saying earlier, if you have a representative at the state, federal, local level, and you feel like they're on the right side of issues that you care about, that's wonderful. And you can always call or email us and let us know what you're thinking and feeling. And if you just want to say, like, keep fighting the good fight, we love to hear that, and that's wonderful. So that's the best case scenario. But I would also encourage folks, and I can share information later, to reach out to representatives from other areas in the state. I know I mentioned Speaker Hall, and I know I'm being filmed right now, but that's okay. I'm gonna put him on blast. He's the Speaker of the House. He is holding up the budget, and that's dangerous. Just very plainly. I would say the same thing if a Democrat were doing that, but we don't act like that. It's dangerous, it's unprofessional, and it's completely unnecessary. So I would encourage folks, reach out to Speaker Hall. I think that's really important.
He's the one with the power right now, right?
Correct. He is the Speaker of the House. So on the House side of things, he is the one who can help get the budget negotiations moving or hold them up. So I would encourage folks to reach out to him. You can even just Google Matt Hall, Michigan. His office number, email, all of those things will come up. And again, you know, for state representatives, we each represent about 90,000 people, but by extension, we represent all 10 million people across the state. So don't feel like you are only confined or can only reach out to your specific rep. I would encourage you, let everybody in Lansing or anywhere know that you're paying attention, that you're watching, and that they are accountable to you. I think that's critically important, especially right now. So I'm gonna zip it. I know I've thrown a lot of information at you, so just wanna open it up for any questions. I'm happy to take questions. Yeah, Rachel?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I think that at your level, at the state level, at the city level, or the federal level, right, that's our role as sort of the citizens, is to remind our elected officials, like, hey, we're paying attention, we see what you're doing, and we like it or we don't like it, and that, you know, we have the power of the vote. And I think right now it's been a little scary for some people, and it feels like things are a little chaotic, but we do have that power.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, it's bigger than we realize.
It is, and I would just echo that, and I appreciate you saying that. Every voice matters, every vote matters. Don't be afraid to reach out. Your representatives are normal people. Well, normal might not be the right word.
Most of them, yeah.
Let me take that back. Your representatives, right, it gets weirder, I think, the higher up you go in government. But your representatives are people, like, I'm your neighbor, I live right around the corner, it took me 5 minutes to get here. So, like, don't be afraid to reach out. Folks need to be accountable to you, your voice does matter. And like I said, just letting people know you're paying attention. I know, again, Cheryl, we were talking earlier about, you know, this vote at the federal level last night under the cover of dark. You know, 880 billion proposed cut from Medicaid, 500 billion proposed cut at the federal level from Medicare, SNAP benefits, just basic decency. All these elements are on the chopping block right now. So again, it could not be more critical of a time to pay attention and to make your voice heard. None of this is inevitable and none of this has to happen. So I think it's really important to raise your voice and let folks know what you're thinking. And that you can vote them in, you can vote them out. Do what you need to do. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Other questions? Yeah.
Campaign contributions, if the official retires or whatever, what's the rules for disbursement of whatever's in there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it varies a little bit depending on the account. For a regular, what we would call a CTE, which is like your committee to elect, that's just kind of a standard campaign account. Typically, I believe what I did at the local level, when I was done running for city council in Dearborn, I think I had a little bit of campaign debt, so I paid that off and just zeroed out the funds. You can donate it, I know at the local level, you can donate to a charity.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, and if you have any debt, you can pay that off as
I
well.
think they might be able to donate to another campaign, possibly.
Maybe, I have to double check.
Maybe, that's the one,
Yeah.
but I know
Yeah.
nonprofit is for sure.
Yeah, yep, nonprofits you can give to, so typically that's what you would do. I will say there's some murkiness, there are other kinds of accounts as you get into the state level, hence some of the transparency measures I was talking about earlier. There are other accounts called 527 accounts, there are leadership PACs, there are also kind of dark money, C4 accounts, so those are governed a little bit differently. I'd have to look into the rules for where some of that money goes, but I can tell you, I know in one of those kind of, I would say murkier state level accounts, there was a headline within the last year or two about someone who had served at the state level in Michigan and still had, I think, like a few $100,000 in that account. And so they were trying to figure out, you know, how to kind of tighten that up and figure out what they should be doing with that and what those rules are. So I think I will say honestly, there's still a lot of work to be done on that. At the state level, certainly, maybe at the federal level too, I know less about that. But campaign finance reform is a huge issue. I would love to see all elections be publicly funded. I think we need to get major donors and dark money out of politics. And I will say really quickly on that note, and this isn't something I'm working on directly, but there is talk of a ballot measure in Michigan that would, among other things potentially, essentially prohibit dark money from coming in. And usually that happens at the state and largely at the federal level. Arizona passed a similar measure with overwhelming public support several years ago. It was challenged in the courts, I think, 2 or 3 times, but it always held up. So keep an eye out for that as 2026 approaches. There may be some other ballot measures as well.
Nothing for this November.
Correct. To the best of my knowledge, correct. This year is more, local elections, of course, in Dearborn Heights, mayoral, council, clerk, and treasurer are up, and in Dearborn, mayor, clerk, and council.
And it's your whole council and your.
Correct, in Dearborn. Yeah, it's a little different.
Members.
Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
we do a 4 and 3.
Yeah, that's nice.
Super.
Yeah, yeah, it's good.
First, you can, if somebody dies and has a committee, they can donate up to the maximum allowed to the other committee which they want to donate to. And the rest they can donate to non-profit organization,
Right,
all the money which they have left.
right, thank you.
My question is, our important issue in Dearborn Heights is the flood.
Yes.
What you guys going to do for Dearborn Heights about the flood?
Yes, thank you for that question. So the question has to do with kind of flooding, Ecorse Creek, I would imagine specifically. So I was anticipating that question, I'm glad you brought it up. I spoke to our county commissioner, David Kniezek, this morning about that. So as folks may know, there's about $10 million allocated from ARPA funds. And Commissioner Kniezek was able to secure that funding to work on Ecorse Creek. To kind of, I think, work to expand the creek a little bit and dredge and clean things out. We know that that hasn't happened in about 60 years.
It's not exactly that good.
Okay.
They're just ripping out all the
Dredging.
they're not dredging at all, they're just
Okay.
ripping the vegetation out.
I've seen some
And
of
it's,
that.
it's,
Okay,
I'm not happy about
I
it.
hear you, and I thank you for sharing that. I've seen some
We were
of the
discussing it
photos
earlier
there.
today.
Yep, absolutely. So I know that they've started kind of in the Detroit area, a little further east of where we are now, and they're working their way towards Dearborn Heights. So I know Commissioner Kniezek is keeping an eye on that. I think he just asked at the county level for an update last week. I have seen, Rachel, to your point, you know, the removal of vegetation, which is concerning for a variety of reasons. I know there is a plan, or was a plan, to dredge and kind of clean things out because a lot of sediment and other things have collected.
That was the
Over the
original
years.
proposal, I think,
Right.
and then at some point
It
it
shifted.
changed, yeah.
Yep, so waiting on an update there, and I wanna see kind of what that specifically will look like for the Heights. I know it's a critically important issue. At the state level, you know, we're trying to, one, I think we wanna secure funding for the creek, and we wanna make sure that this county process is good, and that it makes sense, and that folks are informed and aware of what's going on. So I think more information to come on that, but I hear your concerns on the clearing of the vegetation. So we wanna make sure the creek gets dredged, so that all the sediment is cleared out and the water can actually flow as it's meant to. And even then, it's not quite what we would want it to be, but I think we at least wanna get to that point. So more to come, I apologize, I wish I had a more timely update on that, but I'm waiting to hear from the county on that front. So I hear the concerns on the clearing of the vegetation.
You said Kniezek was looking into it, asked for an update
Correct.
last week?
Correct, he
Okay.
had asked for an update, I believe at a meeting that they had last week, and he will have more information, so as soon as I have that, I'll pass that along. I apologize, I wish I had more of a concrete update this evening.
I'm hoping we can have him maybe at our next Ecorse Creek meeting.
That'd be great.
I just had an idea that came to mind, and I don't know if it's possible. Is there anything that could happen at the state level perhaps that would ease the tension between the city and the county over maintenance? To get the
Yeah.
city permission
Mm.
to go in there and clear the log jams, to clear out what we can, even if it's on a volunteer basis.
Mm.
Show me the money.
Yeah,
And that's why I'm saying volunteer basis. I mean, there's enough guys in D7 that I know that have equipment that could get in there, the Van Ash family from St. Sebastian. I mean, you know, it affects us all. I get out there with my chainsaw that I had at the creek cleanup, right, to clear up some log jams if I need to.
for sure.
But I don't, there's that weird tension there with the legality.
Yeah, that is challenging, and I know the county, Donovan, I don't know if you wanna chime in, but the
Yeah.
county has traditionally been in charge of it, although
Right.
nothing has happened for 60 years, so that presents its own challenges, yeah.
So I chaired the Eagle budget last term.
Oh, okay.
So for flooding instances, we put a little bit of money, we put more money in for water infrastructure. So about $600 million came to Detroit and the surrounding area of Wayne County to get rid of lead pipes.
Right.
So that was something really big, because I'm not sure if you guys remember this. In Detroit in particular, our school district, right before COVID, literally had to shut down all the drinking water for
Right.
3.5 years. I don't know if you guys remember this.
Oh, yeah.
Because the schools were testing higher levels of lead, But you guys gotta remember, if the schools are testing high levels of lead,
That's the
what
kids
about our
drinking it
communities
too.
and our neighborhoods? Because
Right.
all these pipes are interconnected, you cannot
Right.
separate.
Right,
They try, but it's really, it's old infrastructure.
yeah.
So that was my biggest focus with these ARPA dollars, was trying to figure out how to get the bare minimum.
And getting the
And give
lead
the lead
pipes
out.
out after Flint, it was such a high
Yes.
priority for everybody, really. We understand that now.
Exactly. So my question is now with Eagle, and I can touch base because I got a good relationship, and I know Rep. Byrnes does too. Has Eagle been approached about this? Like,
Yeah.
have they, because I haven't talked to them about this particular issue.
Yeah,
I don't know how
Yeah.
much Eagle's been involved before.
Yeah.
We've had some conversations to raise the issue,
Yeah.
but I don't think there's clarity on kind of the local involvement component. So let me look into that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's some different ways we can get sort of an agreement that we'll all work together, you know what I mean? Yeah,
Agreed, so it's not all on.
Not right now.
yeah, it feels like a lot of competition.
Well,
Our engineer,
Full of
which
crap.
indeed has gotten,
Full of
we
crap.
have 2 bridges that are being corrected in the south end. There are 14 bridges in Dearborn.
Right.
13 on the south end.
Yeah, it's a-
And so we're working with that, so we've got a little something. But I'm trying to think, what's the name for all the different areas, with that $10 million?
Oh, they didn't even
What
look
do they
at
call
that.
it? Anyhow, it's sections, and we are sections range through,
Yeah, kind of
I
that
think,
corridor.
7.
Yeah.
Well, we just drove by, I've been keeping an eye on how far they've gotten, and but around Christmas time, they were near 75.
Yeah.
And then we were just driving by there today, and it was
Bowling alley over there.
about Thunderbolt
Are they
Lanes.
in Allen Park now?
Yeah, they're in Allen
That's
Park,
what I
Thunderbolt
heard.
Lanes, but they haven't gotten like tonight, they haven't even gotten to like the neighborhood across from the hill
Right.
yet.
And what most people don't understand is that you have an easement at the back of those properties
Mhm.
to the creek. And they have the right to go in there and they take down your fence, they're not taking down garages, I don't think. Concrete, and Zuhair's got something. on
One
that
more
too.
question.
Yeah, yeah,
In the state of Michigan, the police officer cannot give a ticket to somebody unless he handles it by hand. Is there any way you guys can change that?
That's interesting. Donovan, you look like you wanna, do you wanna check?
So
Yeah,
I'm working on legislation right
That's a
now.
legislation
Yeah.
issue.
yep,
And
It is.
I think we should be able to have a police officer, if he sees somebody driving 100 miles an hour, but he doesn't want to chase him,
sure.
we should be able to send them a ticket to his house and bring him in.
Mhm.
So,
Take it away.
this is, okay, I'm gonna stand up for
Come on.
this. So, this is an issue near and dear to my heart, because right now I represent Northeast Detroit in the city of Warren in Macomb County. And if you know anything about Warren,
Yeah,
they have a history of just chasing people, messing up people's property, beating up folks. It's kind of crazy. And so to alleviate some of that, we have done some legislation around, and I don't know if it's going to pass, but we're looking at working with Republicans on it to figure out different ways to ensure, instead of initiating, putting up, and this is going to get to some legality because it's probably going to get challenged in the courts. But we're looking at different ways to use the speed cameras, right? Like they do in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. One of my good friends of mine, who's the mayor of Baltimore, Brandon Scott, when they implemented this a few years ago, he was city council president at the time. It literally curtailed not only police chases, but in terms of police interaction and negative interaction among police, it went all the way down. Because I don't know if you guys know this, close to 85% of all killings by police initiate from a traffic stop. And so, in my view, let's figure out different ways to get the police off the beat and put them where they actually need to go, which is to try to figure out how to solve these crimes, right? And break-ins and things of that nature, instead of putting them on the beat and like use the cameras and our technology. But it gets into, Uncle Sam, and so like, it's a work in progress, but we'll see what happens.
I'll give you
Yeah.
an example.
Yeah.
In Philadelphia, if you go on the highway, you have to buy a ticket to pay for the toll. Now, some people, they just keep driving. Believe it or not, I send
Yes.
the ticket.
Oh, yeah, you good, you getting that ticket in the mail.
So we can do the same thing.
We can,
Okay,
So we can send a ticket to the registered home of that vehicle,
Yes.
in lieu, just the same way they do with parking tickets, in lieu of the actual driver themselves.
yeah.
But it requires a very extensive budget if you want to go down to the privacy concerns and having it on the road. But if you're in a public space, I'm all for having cameras,
Yeah,
sending tickets there, even if you don't have a clear vision of that, you just send it to, in Florida, they do the same thing, by the way. They send you a ticket and they have you the picture of both the license plate in the back, as well as the driver from the front. And if you want to contest it, you
Yeah.
have the rights to, and there's a whole process there. So there's
True.
a few angles you have to attack it.
because you might be the owner of the car, but you're not driving at that
Exactly.
particular instance, so,
But
yeah.
then you also have a sense of responsibility if you are the owner of the vehicle and it is in a place and going to
Yeah.
plate, speed limit, if you cannot identify the person.
Yeah,
So
true.
Florida does that in the event of tickets where you can't identify that person, it's just registered to the vehicle.
Yeah.
itself.
That makes sense, and I think that's a huge issue. I know in our local area, a lot of concerns around driver safety, especially for younger drivers. So, you know, if a parent or an adult in the home is letting, you know, a child, whether they're licensed or not,
Yeah,
take their vehicle out, again, that added level of responsibility. But I just wanna say Donavan has been doing amazing work on the public safety front
yeah.
ever since I've known him, so he's a real champion for that.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I want to take over your meeting. You killed me. I was so proud. I'm sitting and I'm like,
It's good to see the team.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it is nice to
Yeah.
see two state reps, like, having a good relationship and
Yeah.
being able to work together. It's
well, you
great.
guys have an amazing rep. Like, she truly cares. I've never met anybody so caring.
Yeah.
Like, she has the heart. And I'm so glad y'all elected her. Seriously.
Likewise, he's the best. Any other questions?
We do wanna keep you in some capacity, what are your ambitions?
Ooh.
Well,
Ooh.
yeah, what are the term limits for state reps? I was gonna say, how
Yeah.
long do we have you as a state rep if we keep voting for
Sure.
you, right?
Yep, so I'll answer kind of both questions. Maybe I'll speak to term limits first.
Yeah.
So back in, I think it was 2022, proposal one was on the ballot, so that included like personal financial disclosure rules for legislators, which is a whole other topic that I could get into, but I'll save that for another day. And the other piece was a change in term limits. So currently, you can serve for 12 years total. So if you wanted to, if you get elected to the House, you could serve all 12 years in the House,
Mhm.
or you could do a mix of your time in the House and in the Senate. So it really just depends, but essentially you have 12 years between the House and the Senate in Lansing. So you can either split your time or do that all in one chamber. So to answer your question, that's what that looks like currently, so it's a change as of a couple years ago. I'm currently serving in the House and I'm really happy to be there. I will share more news when I have it, but I know a lot of folks have encouraged me to take a look at our state Senate seat, which will be kind of a slightly new district in 2026, and it'll be an open seat. So definitely looking at that, and we'll share more news when I have it, but just have appreciated the encouragement from folks. in the
And
community.
that would be when you were normally up for election again,
Correct.
right? So it's not like you'd be leaving in the middle of a term or
Right.
something.
Absolutely.
It would just kind of be a shift.
It would, correct. And I will share with folks, the new Senate district, which will be District 2, will include, I'll try to go in alphabetical order, Allen Park, Dearborn Heights, a portion of Detroit, so essentially the Warrendale neighborhood, so right next door, Melvindale, and roughly half of Taylor. So that's what that'll look like. As I mentioned earlier, where Donavan and I currently serve, House districts are about 90,000 residents. State Senate districts are about triple that. So it's a much larger population. So yeah, an opportunity to serve more people, which is something I'm always interested in. But we'll be able to keep Dearborn and Dearborn Heights, which is super important to this one. So,
And I do have one other question about finances and grants.
Yep.
When can we apply for grants from this budget?
so good question. So kind of a two-part answer, if you will. So back in, I think it was late April, in the House, we submitted what's known as requests for an community enhancement grant. So we have a new process this year. There is now a public portal in the House. So anyone can look and see what representatives have requested money for. So I requested a lot of money, I'm not gonna lie, because I'm always out there advocating for our community, as is Donavan. I requested a lot of money for Dearborn and Dearborn Heights. So in the Heights, I know I requested, I think it was $2 million for improvements to our fire station on Telegraph. We got 10 million to build a new station kind of on the north end, because the current one is literally sinking into the ground, so we're working on that. But want to make some upgrades and expand capacity at our station on Telegraph. So we submitted some, requested $2 million for that. Also requested several $100,000 from me directly, and I think several million in total for Hype Athletics. Some of their programming specifically around literacy for youth, you know, working with mothers, nutrition for, you know, new moms and their babies. So looking at that as well. We also requested, I think it was about 1.75 million for Wayne Metro. Folks may know at the old St. Albert the Great kind of school church campus, they have a Head Start program there. So we're looking to help them really just amp up the infrastructure in that building. I know I went for a visit back in, I don't know, I think it was April maybe, early April. It was pretty warm outside that day, unlike now. And I went in and I was sweating and I was like, what's going on in here? And the heat was still going, right? Because their HVAC system needs a lot of work. So things like that. So some of those structural pieces that we're looking at in terms of supporting the community. So there's that component. And then, you know, if there are additional grants that might be department specific, those deadlines tend to come at different times in the year depending on what it is. So if there's something specific, we can always talk through that as well. But kind of our main budget grant requests have been put in.
So those other grant requests, we wouldn't know about those until the final budget gets passed and
Correct.
signed by the governor,
That
correct?
is correct. And again, normally that would be early July. I
And
hope that that will be the case this
hopefully-
year, and we're advocating for that.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And one more question, you know, the water bills are horrible everywhere.
Yes.
Why didn't the state help out with the
GLW.
stuff for Highland
Yes.
Park,
For the
the
Highland
other
Park,
13 cities?
The
that
water
you called out?
affordability, is that what we're?
Well, we all
Yeah.
took the burden on, and
Yeah.
they haven't given back what they absorbed.
So I think, and Donovan, you may know more about this, I'm thinking through, I know there was conversation on this last year, I know there were water affordability bills that were up, and we were shy, I think, one vote,
Yeah.
during lame duck,
Yeah.
wasn't either one of us.
So
Yep.
I don't know if y'all know Stephanie Chang, she's one of the state senators, and myself, we led the water affordability bill package. Came, like, I don't know if you guys remember what happened in Lame Duck last year. For 3 weeks, consecutive weeks, towards the end of the term in December, Republicans never showed up. They just decided to march off. And then at the time, we had a 1-seat majority in both chambers, and it only took one of us to not show up, which was a person, you want to name her? Which was Karen Whitsett. And she tanked a whole bunch of bills. So water affordability was one of them. It would have, and I don't know if you guys know about the MEAT program on the utility, on the heating side with DTE and consumers. So essentially, everybody pays into this pot $2 a month. And what it does is provide utility assistance for folks who need help with heating and electricity bills. This will be literally the same thing, but on the water side. And at this particular time, water is going up for everybody, all communities, from Macomb all the way up north, and as well as here in Wayne County. And one of the things we want to try to do is base it off of somebody's income, because there's a lot of bad debt. So what is going on is, we're one of the few states too, if you have a debt, a water debt, it rolls over to your property tax. I don't know if y'all know that.
Yep, a lot of people take advantage of it.
Yeah, so the county, Wayne County says they don't do it anymore for residential properties, but I don't know if that's all the way true.
It definitely still happens.
There was a person in Oakland County in particular, this happened, I think, maybe right before COVID. And Andy Meisner was the county treasurer. He got in trouble for this. It was all over the news. A dude who owned his house for 52 years. Guess how much he lost his house by? Guess how much? Huh?
$50?
$7. A $7 water bill. Unreal. So this is the stuff we want to try to figure out how to prevent. But we need more people to start paying their bills, so we have to make it more affordable.
And
So-
not letting them go to the county, right?
Yes. Yeah, and that's the plan. And so the bad debt won't go amongst everybody, all the ratepayers essentially. So we're trying to do that, and then we're also trying to, do a $2 fee for everybody, but then on the state side, from the appropriations, have appropriation every year to cover even some of that bad debt and the historical bad debt, if
Right.
that makes sense. So I got an amendment in this year's budget coming up for $60 million, which will cover everybody's bad debt, and then hopefully we get to implement the legislation for a $2 fee to
And
cover everybody.
And then
from
it
here
would
on out.
cover it moving forward.
Yes,
It's
that's-
all the past plan for the moving
yeah,
forward.
but it's a little tricky because not everybody has a municipal system. Water's a little more trickier than heating, but
Yeah.
we're trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Awesome.
Is there something that, like, I mean, it's similar with DTE kind of, and how they're always wanting to raise rates. Is there anything that
Oh,
the
they
state
were-
can
they
do
about to-
to
they just
cap
went-
those
Yeah.
things?
They just went for another rate increase.
I'm
I don't
sure
know if
they
you saw
did.
that.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
sure, doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
They're always
Like,
absolutely.
cause like that'd be nice if we could get some, but I would assume at this point with just sort of the contention
Yeah,
with having not a unified all three sides, it's a lot harder to get anything through right
Yeah.
now, right?
It's
True.
challenging for
True.
sure.
Yeah.
But utility accountability, I know we're both passionate about that.
yeah.
That's a big one, and I know Donavan, you had worked on the taking back our power bills.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanna speak to that at all.
Oh, okay, I'll do it too. So all this corporate influence, big corporate influence in our politics, utility companies, they give us small dollars as elected officials, but we're beholden to them if we accept this check. And what goes on is they will threaten you in the halls of Lansing. And I've been threatened, I'm sure Red Byrnes has been threatened.
I haven't actually.
Oh, you're right.
I know.
I've been threatened all
I
the
know a lot of people
time.
have.
Yeah.
They're wild.
All the
They're
time.
wild. Yeah.
They threatened me, told me, hey, we're gonna primary you, by the blessings of God, we didn't have a primary, they called everybody, saying, we want Donovan out. And all the people that were usually, the usual suspects who would take a check from them, told them Donovan's the best thing that's ever happened to us. Why would we get rid of him? So the legislation introduced was taking all corporate money, especially from utilities, out of politics. They cannot donate to any of our campaigns, our C4s, any of the dark money, because they spend more than any other entity.
And they're spending money
In
that
the
we
state.
paid on our electric bills to
True.
donate to you now,
True.
right?
And they make these ads, right?
Yeah.
These radio ads, TV ads saying, oh, we have renewable energy, oh, we're reliable, all this stuff, and it's a bunch of farce. So I will say this too, is these utility companies are so tricky. They get on my last nerves. And this is the thing that's bipartisan. It doesn't matter which party. I get calls from Republicans
Yeah.
saying, yo, we might disagree with you on a bunch of stuff, but this, go at it. Because they always go to the MPSC, or Michigan Public Service Commission, which I put an amendment in for the past 2 years that requires the MPSC to have 4 meetings a year outside of Lansing, once a quarter.
Yeah.
And so that's why they're having it in our communities, because I want them to get, instead of us getting the calls and getting cussed at, I want you guys to go, because you guys are making 6 figures and you are making these decisions in the silo.
Not only that, Zoom.
Exactly. So they're required now, and once a quarter, to come to Detroit area, to come to Grand Rapids area, to go up north, and then I think another one they can choose wherever they want. But outside of Lansing.
Yeah.
So they can hear from you guys what the heck's going on, and are these utilities doing what they need to do?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they're blaming on vegetation management,
Oh.
which is tree cutting. That's another term for tree cutting. In reality, they haven't invested in I know in Detroit, I got power lines in operation in my neighborhood since about 120 some years.
Wow.
Yeah,
So Henry Ford installed them probably.
Yeah, man, listen, it's great.
Right. Yeah, no joke, right?
So I'll say this and I'll shut up, because I don't want to take over. But, so my wife and I, we have a 3-year-old baby boy at home and a 1-year-old.
Oh.
And then we have a baby girl on the way.
Oh.
Yes, she's doing all, I'm excited to meet her.
Ooh.
So my 3-year-old, when we brought our 3-year-old home from the hospital, he had to spend his first 5 days in the hotel room. First 5 days in the hotel room, because there was a power
Oh my
in our community. So since he's been alive, and he's only been alive for 3 years and 3 months. Since he's been alive, we lost power. Can you guys guess how many times we lost power?
30.
So I know, I think the mayor and the council have been working to get a contractor, for that project. Again, we've got $10 million for it, so looking to build, a fire station. I think it'll likely have 3 bays, and administrative offices as well. So it's similar to what's on Beach Daily, but newer, and on land where it will not be sinking. So that's what we're looking to do. And I don't wanna speak for the city, that's not my place, but I know that that's in process, currently, so I can say that.
Now, there's the $10 million, what's the stipulations on the usage of that, or
Sure.
how that's implemented?
Yeah, yep, so you've got until it's 2026, to use the funds, so end of the year-ish. And, you know, ideally, it will be constructed by that point. If we need to ask for an extension, that's something we could consider, but ideally, we would not do that because it really, yeah, we don't wanna do that. And for a few reasons. One is that we wanna show that Dearborn Heights, when it gets money from the state, that it can use that money in a reasonable amount of time. And likely, as I alluded to, well, I didn't allude to earlier, I said straight up, we're having challenges figuring out a budget in Lansing. So trying to, you know, come back and say, okay, we got this money a couple years ago, but it hasn't been used, is there a way to extend it? Is probably not gonna fly in the current environment. So we definitely wanna make sure that that money gets utilized. And again, it's the way that the enhancement grant request was written, it is for the construction of a new fire station specifically. So the funds do have to be used for that. And I'll give kind of a side-by-side comparison. For the city of Dearborn, we were able to get $5 million, and that's not for a new fire station, but that's for upgrades to existing stations in Dearborn. So we made a modification to that grant recently that would allow Dearborn to purchase kind of an additional parcel to expand parking, because one of the stations like literally has no parking. Their firefighters are parking in the neighborhood, and it's really challenging. So we were able to make kind of an amendment to that grant, but again, that's something that, you know, is not usually typical. Normally you would submit the grant, you say these are the parameters, and that's kind of what you stick to in terms of scope of the project and then the timeline.
Now, you said it has to be used by the 2026, does that mean all that money has to be spent by then, or allocated for a specific?
Yeah, so I know we were texting about that. I'm gonna follow up with you via email with the specific language, so I don't wanna misspeak on that. I know that it at least needs to be allocated by that point, but again, I don't wanna misspeak and say that every penny needs to have been spent by that time, but I'll double check and look back. I have more of the current year's grant information in my head, so I'll look at that with my staff and we'll circle back with you on that.
Through the end of 2026?
Yes.
End of 2026 or by 2026?
By 2026.
End of the year.
Oh, no.
To even start a project by then would be,
So that's,
tight.
So it's
Yeah.
probably like it probably needs a contract.
yep, so you definitely, and
More than that.
And Councilman, I don't wanna speak for the city, but I believe that an RFP went out. I don't know if you wanna speak to that at all?
Well, yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay,
We're not
Okay.
privy to that information yet.
okay, all right, well then, I will say in conversations that I have had, my understanding, and again, this is not my purview, so I don't wanna put my foot in my mouth, but my understanding is that an RFP went out and that there have been conversations with a contractor. That is the last that I have heard. I would have imagined that council would have been briefed on that. I'm seeing some heads shaking, so I can circle back with all of you, on that, but that is, to the best of my knowledge, that is my current understanding. So I will talk with you all more about that, and we'll get you some of that paperwork as well.
I'd like to jump in, Tom. I have a question for the room. Did we find a new location for that fire department? Because I know we were having issues with Crestwood High School and them pulling in and out during school hours. Did they find?
It's
a
on
new
the
place?
agenda again for next Tuesday.
Got it.
Yep,
Thank
the
you.
agenda just came out today, so.
And they gave the part in front of the golf course, they gave it to, Crestwood, for Riverside's use.
Yeah.
Well, that hasn't been, is that on?
That's also on.
That's on the agenda again, I think.
Yeah, right there,
Right.
they're all
And then-
Crestwood people.
And then the next city council meeting is Tuesday of next week at 6 p.m.
Yes.
Correct, and there is a study session beforehand and a closed session beforehand. Yep, so I think 5 o'clock.
All right, Rachel.
So I just read
You got that answer?
I read the email like 2 hours
Yeah,
like,
so more to
that's
come next week, and then Councilman Wenzel, I'll follow up with you on some more of those details, so we can make sure to get that moving.
So speaking of contractors,
Yes.
I'm affiliated and I do a lot of projects with union, IBW, Laborers Union,
Yep.
Plumbers Union,
Yep.
or all the unions. I was a union member for 45 years myself. There been talk lately with me about establishing a responsible contract and best value bid evaluation standards
Yeah,
for construction projects. Are you familiar with that?
yes,
And I wanna put something together. Would you be willing to help me out a little bit on that?
sure,
For
we can
City
talk
of
about
Dearborn
that.
specifically?
Yeah, I know the city of Warren, and Donovan, you might know more, because that's kind of your area. I know that they brought forward, something of that nature. I don't know for sure if it passed city council, but I know that they were looking at that kind of labor standards and practices for local contracts. So I'd have to double back on that, but yeah, I'd be happy to chat with you about that. I think that'd be great.
Just to let everyone know, it's basically, one of the main things is that you don't the city doesn't necessarily hire union contractors, but contractors that pay their employees benefits and social security,
Yep.
things of that
So
nature.
you can cover that through Davis Bacon Act, through
Yes.
prevailing wage, there's certain things
If
that
it is
even if you are not
if it
union,
is
you're still
federal,
protected from
yeah.
municipality
Sure.
projects like that.
I think it's good to reinforce it though at different levels, like,
It
that's
is.
nice, yeah.
It is, and it sends a nice, strong message too about the city's values, so I think that's really important. I'd be happy to chat with you on that, and we can, again, I think kind of look to the city of Warren. I know they at least brought something up on that front. I believe it passed, but don't quote me on that, I'm not 100% sure.
You can get some apprentices up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those questions.
Tracy, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Ann Arbor announced yesterday they're doing a net zero fire station.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And,
In Arbor.
I saw that too.
and I was
Interesting.
wondering if that allowed them more grant money, or is that something Dearborn Heights is looking into for our fire station?
That's a good question. That's the first I've heard of it, so I can't speak to that offhand. I don't know if anyone else in the room has knowledge. It sounds wonderful though, so zero emission.
Yeah,
Okay.
Right, it's,
I think at the point we're at, that could be something that could be worked into the designs and potentially could go out for further grants. That's certainly something that I think maybe Nancy could talk to Mr. Deeb about at the Creek meeting.
Mr.
You
Deeb
need
is
to
there
have
Even,
first.
yeah.
person here.
I know you
Yes.
might see him at different times too, if
Oh,
that's
yeah.
sooner.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, that'd
supposed
be
to be
wonderful.
geothermal as far as heating and cooling,
Sure. Yeah,
solar energy,
that makes sense.
But
and
yeah.
the
Sounds
first
great.
one they announced yesterday, but they said they've got another 3 they're planning to do the same thing.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
With your understanding, do we have to have matching funds or no?
I don't know where, we'd have to seek, we'd probably have to seek out grants. That'd be something you'd probably ask the funding scout people about. They would probably be able to find those grants.
Cause that would be our
And it's not working.
Yeah.
That sounds
It's gotta be
wonderful though.
spent.
And I
That's a
can
really
say,
good idea.
yeah, I'll look into that. I hadn't heard of that yet. I know I worked in Ann Arbor for like
Get the specifics.
10 years before coming to Lansing, and they're always, they're kind of the
That's
unicorn in Michigan.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're like the first one to do something. But that's exciting. I think that sounds wonderful. I think we could definitely look into that and talk to the council and the mayor about it. Yeah, that sounds great.
How are we doing with questions for Erin? Have we worn out enough?
I don't want to take up your whole meeting.
You're the one that's here.
You're here and you're answering questions, so why would we kick you out, right?
We never see our state senator.
Well, if we switch over next time, then we will see our state senator and whoever the new rep is, right?
Never met her.
Well, I've met her.
Are there any other questions?
I've got a sort of fun one maybe.
Yeah.
What's something that you think we could do better in Dearborn Heights? Like a project or something that might be fun or something that maybe you think that we're overlooking?
Yeah, oh, I love that. That's a great question. You know, on my way here, I was driving by the old Lenny's Diner.
Yeah?
That place. I'd love to see that revitalized, and then the old St. John the Baptist School. I would love to see that, maybe a community center, housing, what have you. I have some.
It's such a
ideas.
beautiful building.
Little daily drive.
Yeah, it's lovely. So those are just two kind of things that, you know, kind of popped into my head as I was driving
So
here.
kind of maybe those small projects, like getting some grants out there, maybe in that Tifa district.
Just some
Yeah.
revitalization of like
Yeah.
existing
There's Mr.
older
Tippett right
buildings.
here.
I know.
Yeah, I just think it would be really interesting. I always love the
Yeah.
idea of like breathing new life into something that, you know, used to be kind of a community gathering space or a place that holds memories for people. So I think that would be exciting. I know we were talking a lot about the creek earlier. I would love to see some like native plants, some rain garden work. You know, I know that that's something that a lot of communities are investing in or doing right now. So I think Dearborn Heights is a great space for that. And I know, you know, the city, and not to speak on behalf of local gov, but I know the city has, you know, purchased some homes along the creek. And, you know, those homes have been removed to help, you know, kind of ideally alleviate some of the flooding issues. But we also don't necessarily want to just have empty plots of land because then the water can just continue to roll on. So I think figuring out what to do in those spaces, and just be creative in terms of water absorption, specifically along the creek, but really throughout the city. It's an issue, you know, I know Donavan was talking about, you know, water affordability, lead pipes, all of these components earlier. We have a lot of old infrastructure, right? We're an inner ring suburb. Yeah.
All the lead pipes have been replaced.
There you go. So yeah, so we've got some, you know, some newer infrastructure and some aging infrastructure, but I think it's a lot of opportunities for creativity. And also ways, like I know, you know, Councilman Wenzel hosted, you know, kind of the creek cleanup, and we were working on, you know, some of the different plots of land and just, you know, kind of sprucing that up. I wouldn't say revitalizing, because it's already fabulous, but just sprucing it up for springtime and
Just
doing
doing
all
the
of
spring
that.
cleanup, right?
Yeah, it is, and it's a good way to get people out of their house, off their phones, you know, just out into the community and talking to each other. So I think more opportunities like that, where you can bring people together in a way that results in like visible, tangible change. I think we just need more of that. Because it's one thing to talk about change and talk about progress, but when you can see, you know, infrastructure being improved, or, you know, a cleanup event, or an old building being revitalized, those are the things that I think make people come alive and feel excited about their community, and they feel like they're part of something, and like there's potential for growth. So yeah, I think that's great.
The questions I get a lot was the old McKinney party store that was over in Carlisle.
McKinney party store?
Oh, maybe. You want a party store here, you didn't get
They
going.
knocked it down there, seriously, it's been empty for years.
It's
The
gone.
next door was Kursky, used to belong to Westwood, it's down in Annapolis. It is the biggest eyesore, one of the biggest eyesores in the state. And, it's falling down, it's bad shape. I've talked to Mayor Nolan about it many times. That's the question I get from the Heights residents more than anything. Can't you guys do anything with your building? It's not our building, hasn't been our building since the 60s, 70s or 60s, you know? I says, but it's, I don't know who owns it, but it is terrible. I mean, it is, I'm sure people have seen it. We tried to, they got the ordinance, could write Dearborn Heights ordinance could write tickets on it. They got a special approval to do it, but it needs to come down. It needs to take it out. And, you know, I told Mayor Nolan, I said, if you wanna get this going, I said, let me know. I said, I'll work with you. This is like when we took down, McNair, which was one of our schools a long time ago. We bought the site back, then we knocked the building down, because maybe someday we'll wanna put an elementary, we could use an elementary over there.
Sure.
Because we get kids that walk a long way. So that's why we started in-district busing. Didn't want to do it, but, you know, like I say, we got a lot of kids that walk all the way from Easter Road to Thorne. So, I mean, that's a long way.
Yeah, absolutely, I hear you.
So it's things that we've done over the years. We've never forgot about the kids and the residents of Easter and Dearborn Heights.
Absolutely.
And even though we take a section of Dearborn, but we have no residents or students. But it's,
I hear you.
with the things that came through a couple weeks ago or months ago about the new things that the school buildings in the state of Michigan are in disrepair. You know, we passed a bond a couple years ago, first time we passed a bond since 1958.
Wow.
And that's when we built those. So, I mean, this is, we've done good as a district to do things. And, you know, thanks to Dr. Simmons for, really getting behind us and doing that.
Yeah.
But, then we get this information from the state that, after we did all the stuff that we did.
Yeah.
So, like all the rooms, all the classrooms in our district now are air-cooled.
Wonderful. That's
Which,
wonderful.
I mean, I'm happy about that because a lot of kids ain't gonna like this, a lot of teachers ain't gonna like this, but I don't see a reason why we don't have school.
Parents will agree, I think. At least some of us parents will ask that question too.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be totally year-round, I mean, you still.
Yeah, you still get breaks, yeah.
But, I mean, it was set up for, the way farming works, and that's the way it is, but how many farmers we got here.
Yeah.
So it's,
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you for the work you're doing, though, it's really important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's, I like doing it.
Yeah.
Lifelong resident here, so.
That's awesome, thank you so
Yeah,
much
one
for
last
that.
question?
Yeah, thank you
One
for
last
listening.
question.
Yeah, okay.
All
right, take it away.
Is the answer.
Yeah.
There is government race.
Yeah.
State, treasurer, all the positions.
Yep.
Who would you support on the race for government?
Fair question. So the question was, obviously in 2026, we'll be electing a new governor, also Secretary of State and Attorney General. I have not endorsed in any of those statewide races yet. And I'll be frank as I always am. I've had some folks, for different statewide positions approach me, as I think a lot of folks in Lansing have, and ask for an endorsement. I have told them that before I even consider endorsing anyone, I would need them to come to our community, talk with people, make sure they're getting to know our residents in Dearborn Heights and in Dearborn. Because sometimes, when you're in a statewide position, you're pulled in a million different directions, you're all over the place. But we want Dearborn Heights and Dearborn to be two of the places that they are prioritizing and that they really know and understand. So I do my best to convey and to spread the good word about our community and talk about some of our challenges and our needs as well. But I am, I'm one person, and I think it's important for folks who are running for office at the statewide level to really know our community and our people. So that's what I have told them. And I will say, obviously each community has its, unique gifts and challenges. One thing that I have said to folks specifically is that, I think one of the greatest sources of pain in our community is actually a foreign policy issue, right? It's what's happening to the people in Palestine, and I have been very clear. Even though at the state level we don't control foreign policy decisions, there is a direct and deeply personal impact for folks in our community based on what's happening in Gaza. And so I've been clear on that, and I've said, if you want to represent our community in any capacity, you need to talk to people, you need to understand what this looks like. And for our community, it's not just something where, you turn on the news and it's a story and then you turn off the TV. I told someone, and I won't name them, but someone who's seeking statewide office, I said, several months ago now, I was at my best friend since second grade, so we've been best friends for just a couple years now. I'll say how long it's been. But she's like a sister to me. I was at her mom's house, and they were originally from Lebanon, and there was bombing taking place in Lebanon at the time. And her mom, I cried just thinking about it, her mom was literally locked in her bedroom trying to get a hold of her brother because a bomb had just landed near his home. And she literally was just trying to make sure he was alive. And I shared that story with this person who was seeking my endorsement and, who wants to represent our community, our entire state. I said, this is real, and you need to understand this. And I think that emotional component sometimes just, people aren't familiar with it in the way that we all are, and they don't know folks who are directly impacted. So I've been very clear on that with everyone. I want people to come to our community to understand the needs of all of our people, and to understand that Dearborn Heights and Dearborn are global communities. Foreign policy matters to us, and it's personal in a way that, maybe it's not for every community, but certainly that's a need here. So I've been very clear on that. So just want to share that, but I have not officially endorsed anyone in any statewide race yet. I don't know if I will, My focus is really on just making sure people come to us and know our people.
One last,
Good job.
No, wait, I'm gonna jump in here. Would you get involved in local politics?
Let's not go there. That's a conversation for another time.
That's a
my
conversation for
advice to
after
you,
the kid
Tom,
turns up.
Yeah.
is the state of Michigan investing any money in the state of Michigan?
That's a good question. I know I was contacted by a group recently, and we're trying to set up a meeting with them. They reached out to us about divestment. So I am looking to set up that meeting with them, and I wanna learn more from them. I've never served on our appropriations committee, so I don't know, I don't have a firm answer for that question. I apologize, Donovan.
We